You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Yeah. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream. Dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. A dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring." Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia.
Probably the greatest speech, God-inspired speech ever given by any man, at least that I've ever heard. Wow. So I'm listening to that speech today, and I'm like, I got to play this today. And it's nearly, I guess it's going to be the 50th year since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. I was just thinking, can you imagine? I guarantee you just one person like him, the impact he would have had he lived to make this a more perfect union. Just amazing what he was able to accomplish. And, I've told this story before. I'm going to tell it really briefly here. Later on in the program, we'll have Dr. Alveda King is going to be on, Pastor Darrell Scott, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. We'll talk about it. And we have other news we're going to get to today. But I'm listening to that speech, and then I went to Atlanta. Atlanta was the greatest education I ever had in terms of the civil rights movement in this country and the bravery. And I was actually watching David Letterman as a new show on Netflix. David Letterman is so weird. He's so bizarre. But he is a very good interviewer when he wants to be, and he's not being hostile. And he had Barack Obama on. And Obama's taking shots at Fox, and, he loves Barack Obama. All right, that's fine. We don't agree politically. That wasn't the point of it. And then at another point in the program, he had actually taken the time to go to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And that's where he interviewed John Lewis. I think that's where the Congressman John Lewis, if you don't know, actually had gotten hit in the head with a brick on that bridge. And this is when the dogs were put on people, and these times were horrible, and fire hoses were turned on our fellow Americans. It was awful, God awful. And anyway, so they went back there, and there was something actually pretty touching about it. And I thought back to the experience that I had. The first day that I showed up in Atlanta, the mayor of Atlanta at the time, he's since passed away, was a guy by the name of Maynard Jackson. And I got to meet Maynard Jackson and guys like Andy Young and Reverend Joseph Lowery. And I met Congressman John Lewis. Cynthia McKinney was a congresswoman at the time. And I met a bunch of people that really changed history. And if you think of the environment in which they nonviolently would cross that bridge and Selma to Montgomery and everything in between, and they did it, and they changed the world. Now, I just could only imagine. We certainly have a long way to go. But you hear that speech, it just is mind-numbingly amazing. It's almost like you hear, that's like a choir of angels speaking. And I've given a lot of speeches in my life. I've heard a lot of speeches in my life. Nothing touches it. It's so good. Anyway, we'll get back into that later in the program today, and we'll talk at length about it. But the people that were involved in that movement, they were all good people. He was a godly man. No, he wasn't perfect. Everyone's going to, well, he wasn't perfect, Hannity. Okay. And you are? Whoever you are? You're going to tell me you're perfect? Nobody is. There's so much news today, I don't even know where to begin. I will tell you this. We now know the Mueller investigation has to end with the revelation that Andrew Weissman's the guy that got defeated 9-0 in the U.S. Supreme Court, and as a result of his bad investigation and his obstruction case against Anderson Accounting and the Enron case, losing tens of thousands of people lost their jobs because of him. And then he put 4 Merrill executives in jail only to have that overturned by the 5th U.S. Circuit Court. And Weissman now, we find out, was meeting with the AP talking about Paul Manafort. And then he was hired by Robert Mueller along with all the other Obama, Clinton, and DNC donors. And why would Robert Mueller hire somebody with that track record? And we now know that Weissman had a prejudice. He had concluded on the issue of Paul Manafort. He was the chief investigator into Manafort. And he was literally just weeks before telling the press about Paul Manafort. And the AP went with the story. Well, that's called a conflict of interest, prejudging a case. This whole thing just stinks to high heaven. Lindsey Graham is under fire for his comments calling Mexico a hellhole. We'll get to that later. DACA, let me tell you about DACA. And I know that everybody thinks, when we had that open hearing last week, you thought they were going to get DACA isn't going to happen. And even Paul Ryan said that it's off the table in the budget talks. Now they're all going to talk all week about, what if the government shuts down? Let me be the first to tell you, if the government shuts down, it's not a big deal at all in any way, shape, manner, or form. Because the military everybody keeps working. And only non-essential employees are furloughed. And every time we've ever had a government shutdown, guess what? They get their money back. So it's a free vacation for them. But government, it doesn't shut down. It's just a myth and a fear that they put into people's hearts. Anyway, any chance of DACA, the Democrats, if you really pay attention to it, they don't want DACA. Well, they do. They want to not do DACA, not do the wall, not do chain migration, not do a merit-based system. All they want is to be able to use it as a political weapon in 2018. It's obvious now. Now, the speaker has said that DACA will not be on the table in budget talks after Donald Trump refused to accept a deal that would have included it. Now, we have to keep these separate because that's just not good government. It's looping all this stuff together. I think that people are attaching them in their minds as far as leverage is concerned, but they won't be technically attached as far as legislation is concerned. So we'll wait and watch. But you're going to hear all about the looming shutdown all week long. Now, one thing that came out as an aftermath, do you know that Donald Trump apparently paid for a medical mission trip to save a couple of hundred people's eyesight? And Dr. Rand Paul came out with that over the weekend. It's interesting for a guy that doesn't like the people of Haiti that he would pay all that money. We also had an indictment over the weekend or on Friday of one person in the Uranium One case. I'll explain all of that to you. We have Fusion GPS retracting their claim that the FBI had a mole in the Trump camp. I'll explain that. This poor guy that was responsible for what happened in Hawaii, we'll talk about that and how dangerous that is. This poor guy made an innocent mistake. He's going for retraining, and he's been taken off his position. He probably needs the retraining, but I'm glad he didn't get fired. Am I the only one that cares about the poor guy? Everyone wants this poor guy fired. I'm like, okay, he made a mistake. I love the guy that took a video that was on the golf course saying, well, the missile's on its way, but I'm still playing. I just parred the last hole, and I'm going to go. I hit a great drive on this hole, and I'm going to die playing golf. We have more in the Clinton-Haiti scandal. We'll get to that. Democrats are going to skip the State of the Union speech. Oh, and Maxine Waters wants to impeach Trump for name-calling. Yeah, that's a high crime and misdemeanor. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
Impeach 45.
Okay. Reclaiming my time.
By the way, we are not looping that. That's her saying it every time. So I just thought we had an earthquake in the studio because Linda sneezed. What? I heard it through the glass. Is that how you sneeze?
I can't even tell.
Is that a good, Ethan, that's pretty good.
It's really bad.
It's pretty good. Pretty good impression.
I heard it. This glass is thick. It's
soundproof.
It's bulletproof, soundproof.
It's not sneeze proof.
And I'm like, wow. James O'Keefe is going to stop by today. He's got a new video out. It's the lead story on Drudge right now. Pervy Twitter sorting through sex messages and pictures. So let me get this straight. So Twitter, and he's got the undercover video, and we'll show you tonight on TV, but we'll play it on radio, where literally he's talking to one of the chief engineers that hundreds of people that work for Twitter are going through people's private personal information. You know, I guess they have this feature on Twitter where you direct message people, right? And so the direct message you think is private. And he's saying that
the problem is that you think that you're having a conversation with someone. A lot of people don't like to use their emails when they're talking to someone on Twitter because maybe they're just meeting them, or maybe it's someone, of a higher stature, what have you. So,
but it gets bad. People knowing people the way they're sending private pictures.
Right, but the thing is that now they're weaponizing their platforms. So they're basically saying to people, yeah, we're going to use your private messages and we're going to use your pictures and we're going to use them against you and we're going to sell them to advertisers.
Well, that's right. And they're going to sell them, I guess, give them to your wife wife or
right,
your
so now
ex-wife
in
if
the
you're
one,
doing.
in the clip, he's
or
threatening.
husband.
He's threatening the guy. He's like, "I'm going to use this against you. Your wife is going to find out. She's going to divorce you. You're going to." It's horrible.
Why would Twitter allow that? There has to be an expectation of privacy if it says private direct message.
I think whatever you send in something called a direct message, it's direct between you and that person. So maybe people need to ask Jack, what the heck is going on?
Well, yeah. What is it? Who's Jack, by the way?
Jack Dorsey is the guy who runs Twitter. So
you ever talk to that guy?
Oh yeah, all the time. We're close friends. I direct message him regularly.
Do you seriously?
No.
Oh, you've never talked to him?
Hell no.
Like we have people do all sorts of stuff to our Twitter account. Have you ever talked to him when that happens?
No, I've spoken to his legal counsel.
You or a lawyer's?
Exactly.
Exactly. Do that sneeze again. Go ahead. One more time. What is that? Why don't you sneeze like a normal person?
It's just my way of making sure you're awake on this Monday.
All right, James O'Keefe will join us. We'll talk about what's going on at Twitter. It's pretty unbelievable. We have Greg Jarrett, Sidney Powell, also Dr. King's niece, Alveda King, and much more. Straight ahead. All right, 25 till the top of the hour. Happy Monday. Glad you are with us. One of the things I want to do, we like to give you news and information you're not going to get elsewhere, which is pretty much the rest of the media. And it's interesting, James O'Keefe has this new undercover video out. That is something in the past that like 60 Minutes and Mike Wallace did for years. And I think what happened in most cases is it became financially, it wasn't viable for news organizations. Well, they get sued all the time. So I think it's always been a legitimate means for journalists to actually get information. And James O'Keefe does it, and they bubble and fizz like Alka-Seltzer, and they give off their energy, and they have a fit, and they want to delegitimize. Well, if you watch the video of these Twitter guys, I don't care if you're a liberal or a conservative. It doesn't matter. Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. I would think everybody would be upset knowing that, you have an expectation of privacy, and they're not giving it to you as a matter of, according to the engineers and the people that they're getting in this undercover sting, as a matter of how they operate. But the media, I'm sure, will ignore it because it's just James O'Keefe, just like the media ignored, how many issues involving legality involving the Clintons. And I'm going to tell you something. There is, who is it? Congressman Jim Jordan. Now, we've been following issues that nobody else in the media will follow. These stories are bigger than Watergate. Watergate was about a break-in, political operation, and then the subsequent cover-up. And look at the admiration they have for Woodward and Bernstein. And I've interviewed both over the years. I mean, Bernstein is so liberal right now. He's literally just jumped into conspiracy TV land for himself, but that's neither here nor there. Doesn't take away the work that they did, the digging that they did. They have a movie out. I'm sure it's horrible, but about Watergate, and I guess the Washington Post. I was watching the movie. I had a link somebody sent me to the new Churchill movie. I didn't like the parts of it. I didn't like the way they were portraying Churchill in some ways. Now, I didn't finish it, but they definitely captured him in some of the great ways that he deserved. But when they start out, he's like drinking, smoking cigars, impatient. Yeah, okay, we know he smoked cigars. We know he liked to drink. We know he was impatient. But he was also the guy that during the bombing of Britain every single solitary day went out and walked among the people of Great Britain, and he was the only answer at a time where literally, all of Europe was hanging in the balance because of Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. An amazing historic figure. He understood evil in his time. That's why I don't understand how people in this day and age don't understand. Lara Logan, who was on our TV show Thursday, she did a great piece on 60 Minutes last night. And that entire piece was about the 16-year war in Afghanistan. I am telling you, most people, what? Afghanistan? Why? How come? And they don't understand. Half the country never wanted to say radical Islam. So it's really dangerous when you can't even identify who your real enemies are. But the media is corrupt. Look, it's not even an issue to be debated anymore. The bigger story, and you can break down, all right, Hillary, her email server, the whole thing is full of law-breaking, felonies committed. You can't have confidential, top secret, special access program information in a mom-and-pop shop bathroom closet. And we now know that foreign intelligence agencies were able to hack into it, and then they got it all. You can't do that. You can't destroy such evidence. And then you can't obstruct justice by acid washing the hard drives and bleach bitting the hard drives and then busting up the BlackBerries. All right, you've heard me say that before. But that's only one scandal. Now, over the weekend, in case you're interested, or I guess it was on Friday, whenever the day was, we got the feds announcing an indictment into this bribery scheme connected to Hillary Clinton's Uranium One deal. And we broke just the week before, not last week, the week before that in fact, there is an ongoing Justice Department investigation into Uranium One that has been going on for months. I would think this is probably the tip of the iceberg. You're not going to hear about it on any other cable channel because they spend every minute of every day hating Donald Trump and trying to delegitimize Donald Trump and get Donald Trump out of office and basically undo the will of the people with a duly elected president. Anyway, so they announced the Department of Justice an 11-count indictment against this guy, Mark Lambert, in connection to Russian bribery scheme involving the Uranium One sale. He's the former co-president of that Maryland-based transportation company that provides services for the transportation of nuclear materials to customers in the United States and abroad, the DOJ said in a statement. All right, pretty interesting. By the way, this just came over my phone. I bet you this is Velma at the Wynn Hotel. Just came through because we gave her the spa day. Is today her spa day? We got to get an update if it is. I mean, I get every charge on my credit card. It comes right over my phone instantly.
Did she send that via direct message?
No, it comes through my credit card.
That was a joke.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Your Twitter friend.
I'm a little slow. No, she just texts me directly. So that's something to watch. Now, here's the thing. Then you've got Uranium One. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Then you got the email server scandal. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Then you've got on top, you got Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Then you've got Peter Strzok and James Comey exonerating months before they do the investigation. There's huge corruption there. Then you got Mueller and his band of Trump Obama DNC money. And then, of course, Andrew Weissman controversy. We've got so much the media doesn't touch it. Now, on the dossier issue, Congressman Jim Jordan, who's been pretty amazing on his committee asking questions that I think need to be asked, he's come out with a list of 18 questions. And he's right. And we'll get into this at the top of the hour with Sidney Powell and Greg Jarrett. You know, for example, did the FBI pay Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier? Well, I think all indications at this point are either McCabe or Comey did. And I like answers to that question. Then his second question is, was the dossier the basis for the FISA warrant to spy on Americans, or more importantly, an opposition candidate and a president-elect and his team? And why won't the FBI show Congress the FISA application? And if I'm the FISA judge and I was lied to with a Hillary Clinton bought and paid for dossier and the DNC bought and paid for Hillary-controlled dossier, and you lie to me and you use that, I'm told that this was one of the few requests. Remember, at first it was denied. And what put it over the top was the dossier. That's what I am told. So we'll be investigating that in the days to come. And question 3, when did the FBI get the complete dossier? Who gave it to them? Was it Christopher Steele? Was it Fusion GPS? Was it, the Clinton campaign, the DNC, or Senator John McCain's staffer? And question 4, did the FBI validate and corroborate the dossier? By the way, on that, I am told by a really good source. What? Oh, Velma's there. I'll get to Velma in a second. Did the FBI validate and corroborate the dossier? That's a great question. I'm hearing a Clinton supporter did. Did Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, or Bruce Orr work on the FISA application? Well, considering they're all Clinton haters, Trump haters, it would be nice to know if they did. And why and how often did the Department of Justice lawyer Bruce Orr meet with Christopher Steele during the 2016 campaign? We know they met before and after the election. And why did DOJ lawyer Bruce Orr meet with Glenn Simpson after the election? Did they need to get their story straight? As Jim Jordan points out, after their candidate Hillary lost, was this now time for the insurance policy? Were they part of that deal? Did they want to double down on their plan, how to go after the newly elected president, delegitimize him, get him out of office? And when and how, question 8, did the FBI learn that Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, worked for Fusion GPS? And what specifically was she doing in terms of working on the dossier? And why, question 9, did the FBI release text messages between Strzok and Page? Because normally an ongoing investigation is reason not to make that information public. I'm glad they did, because it's helping us ask the right questions now. And question 10, why did the FBI release only 375 of what was 10,000 messages between them? You know, were they the best or the worst or part of a broader strategy to focus attention away from something else? And when can the American people see the 9,600 other texts between them? And why did Lisa Page leave the special counsel, Robert Mueller's probe, after 2 weeks before Peter Strzok? I'd like to know the answer to that question. So Jim Jordan's asking great questions. And why did the intelligence community, question 12, wait 2 months after the election to brief the president on the dossier, January 6, 2017? Why was the former FBI director, was Comey selected to do it? Question 13, was the briefing done to legitimize the dossier? Who leaked the fact that the briefing was about the dossier? And then the New York Times, question 14, reported that George Papadopoulos, was the catalyst for launching the Russia investigation. Well, I don't believe that's true at all, as we pointed out in depth last week. And why did Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson meet with the Russian lawyer, the one that met with Don Jr., before and after a meeting with Donald Trump Jr.? Oh, just an accident, he says. Really? Question 16, why was the FBI counsel, Jim Baker, reassigned 2 weeks ago? Was he the source of the first story on the dossier by David Corn? Or was it someone else at the FBI? And the last two questions, why did the FBI stonewall Congress for months before agreeing only at the last minute to hand over the Trump-Russian probe documents? And did Rod Rosenstein beg Paul Ryan not to do it? And why would Senator Schumer, leader of the Democratic Party, warn President Trump, when you mess with the intel community, they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you? Well, with all due respect, weaponizing the intelligence community is not part of their job. All right, Velma. Velma, did you just go into the Wynn Hotel?
Sean, I am here, and guess what? These people know who I am.
Of course they do.
And they love you.
They love,
and they just so excited.
Oh, so they knew that this was my.
People are so Sean. I'm the only black person here.
Oh.
And these people are so good to me.
Well, why wouldn't they be good to you? You're a nice person.
They treat me like royalty. I think it's because of you, though.
I'm not the one. You're getting a spa day. I don't go for spa days. I don't want anybody touching me.
Well, honey, you know what? I love it. And I put on, my sister was talking about wearing a jogging suit. No, I got on makeup.
Wait. So you go for a spa day, and in light of your going for a spa, you put on makeup?
Well, honey, I'm going to go in a robe pretty quick. And you know what? I got to check my phone because you're supposed to turn your phone
All right, now
off.
what does your spa day include that I got you for Christmas?
You got your people set me up.
Well, what am I? I'm the one that a massage, okay.
I know you're paying for it, but it's a massage. That's what I'm getting at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
At 2 o'clock, I'm getting a facial.
Okay. 3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock, I'm getting my feet done.
A pedi. Go ahead.
4 o'clock, I'm getting my nails done.
So you're getting mani-pedi. You're going to be there for 4 freaking hours?
Oh, I love it, honey.
And you like that?
Oh, well, son, this is a treat. Don't you know every woman would love this? And I'm in the Wynn Hotel where it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. Oh, honey, I am so excited.
I'm so happy that I made you happy. So you like my?
You always make me happy.
Did we include a tip? What?
Oh, I done told everybody at church. I done bragged. I am so happy, honey. And my husband and my kids, they happy for me.
What did your husband and kids say?
They're happy for me. Huh?
What did your husband and kids say? Your husband hates me, but go ahead.
No, he doesn't. They are all just, we prayed that I have a wonderful day. And I can tell you right now, I was going to have a wonderful day whether they prayed or not. But I'm just so happy. I'm in such a good mood. I'm just so happy. Thank you, Sean.
Is this like the best gift you've ever gotten?
Sean, you know what? I can relax, honey. I can sit up, and they asked me whether I wanted a man or a woman.
What'd you say?
I told them, long as I didn't have to expose too much, I'd rather a man.
Whoa!
Well, Sean, as long as he's good looking and don't have a
Oh!
Oh!
I hope your husband's not listening. You're so dead when you get home. Listen, you may think this is weird. I don't like anybody touching me. Strangers.
That's what you said. But
no,
see, I don't mind. You know, something like this is so relaxing. I don't mind. It's going to be really nice.
Well,
I'm so much, Sean.
Well, if you like it that much, I'll give you one every year for Christmas. That'll be my Christmas gift to you. If you like it that much, I'm all in. By the way, when I take my daughter for like a mani and pedi, she hates it because I'd like to get 3 people working on her at once. So because it takes forever, I can't take it.
See, I love.
They put your feet in this little pool, and then after the pool, they're rubbing your feet, and then.
Sean, in my whole life, well, I didn't bring my bathing suit, so I won't be getting in the pool.
Oh,
I just may take a picture by the pool.
Oh, no. I mean, they put you. Oh, you're going to go to the pool at the Wynn too? I think they have a young bar out there.
Sean, they got you doing all kinds of stuff. You can take.
Well, I'll tell you what, Linda. Do you like champagne?
Champagne?
Yeah. Do you like it?
Well, you know I don't drink.
Oh, that's too bad. It would have made the experience a lot better. That's too bad.
Sean,
I was going to order you a bottle of like Dom Perignon or something.
What is that?
It's a very expensive champagne.
No, Sean.
No? Okay. Listen, I got to go because I'm way behind. You have the best day ever. I'm so happy. Merry Christmas to you. We love you.
Sean, you gave it to me, and you know what? I told people, I don't care whether you love Sean or not. I love him, and I tell you what, God sent me an angel when he sent me into me and my children's life.
I love my nephews. They're great kids.
I love you dearly, and I thank you.
Well, and the next thing is we got to get those kids into college. I'm thinking ahead. All right. Thank you, Velma. Have a great day. She's at the Wynn Hotel at our spa day.
FBI Director Comey was drafting an exoneration letter before the investigation was complete. We know Loretta Lynch, one day before the Benghazi report came out, 5 days before Secretary Clinton was scheduled to be interviewed by the FBI, met with former President Bill Clinton on a tarmac in Phoenix. We know after that meeting, when she was corresponding with public relations people at the Justice Department, she was using the name Elizabeth Carlisle. You know, as I've said before, it seems to me if you're just talking golf and grandkids, you can probably use your real name. We know that Mr. Comey publicized the investigation, and we know he made the final decision on whether to prosecute or not. And then when he gets fired, he leaks a government document through a friend to the New York Times. And what was his goal? To create momentum for a special counsel. And, of course, it can't just be any special counsel. It's got to be Bob Mueller, his best friend, his predecessor, his mentor. The same Bob Mueller who was involved, we've now learned, in this whole investigation with the informant regarding Russian businesses wanting to do business in the uranium business here in the United States regarding the Uranium One deal. So I guess my main question is, what's it going to take, if all that, not to mention the dossier information, what's it going to take to actually get a special counsel?
It will take a factual basis that meets the standards of the appointment of a special counsel.
Is that analysis going on right now?
Well, it's in the manual of the Department of Justice about what's required. We've only had 2. The first one was the Waco, Janet Reno, Senator Danforth, who took over that investigation as special counsel, and Mr. Mueller. Each of those are pretty special factual situations.
Let me ask it this way.
And we will use the proper standards, and that's only thing I can tell you, Mr. Jordan.
Well, I appreciate that.
You can have your idea, but sometime we have to study what the facts are and to evaluate whether it meets the standard.
Well said. So let me ask you this. If, in fact,
a special counsel.
Mr. Mueller immediately concluded that Mr. Strzok could no longer participate in the investigation, and he was removed from the team the same day. Did Mr. Mueller take appropriate action in this case?
Yes, he did.
Thank you. In testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, you said that you would only fire Special Counsel Mueller for good cause, and that you had not seen any yet. Several months have passed since then. Have you seen good cause to fire Special Counsel Mueller?
No.
Thank you. If you were ordered today to fire Mr. Mueller, what would you do?
As I've explained previously, I would follow the regulation. If there were good cause, I would act. If there were no good cause, I would not.
And you've seen no good cause so far?
Correct.
Which is pretty unbelievable. We'll address that tonight on the Hannity program on Fox. 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. That last cut, Gerald Nadler questioning Rod Rosenstein, and he's got his own conflicts of interest. Prior to that, it was Congressman Jim Jordan talking to the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And Jim Jordan just today has launched the 18 top questions to be answered. about Russia, the FBI, and the Department of Justice and corruption. Question 1, did the FBI pay Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier? Was the dossier, number 2, the basis for securing the FISA warrant, which to spy on Americans? And why won't the FBI show Congress the FISA application? 3, when did the FBI get the complete dossier? Who gave it to them? Dossier author is Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, Senator John McCain staffer, or Clinton campaign, or the DNC? Did the FBI validate and corroborate the dossier? Did Strzok and Page and Broussard work on the FISA application? Why and how did the Department of Justice lawyer Broussard meet with dossier author Christopher Steele during the 2016 campaign? Question 7, why did DOJ lawyer Broussard meet with Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson after the election? Was it to get their story straight after the candidate, Hillary Clinton, lost, or double down on the plan, I guess we would say the insurance policy, they were going to use after President-elect Donald Trump won? And when and how did the FBI learn that DOJ lawyer Broussard's wife, Nellie Orr, worked for Fusion GPS? And what role did she play in the dossier? And why did the FBI release text messages between Strzok and Page? Normally, ongoing investigation is reason not to do that. And why did the FBI only release 375 of 10,000 text messages? And it just goes on from there. Joining us to weigh in on all of this, Greg Jarrett, Sidney Powell. Sidney wrote the book License to Lie, federal appellate attorney, former federal prosecutor. And Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. Greg, I think these 18 questions are phenomenal, and I have a few myself to add.
They're great questions, and they get down to the fundamentals of the case. Why was a criminal investigation into Trump-Russian collusion launched when there wasn't a scintilla of evidence? And why, given the overwhelming evidence against Hillary Clinton, was she exonerated? And third, why isn't there a special counsel, as Congressman Jordan laid out the facts, to investigate Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Loretta Lynch? Jordan laid out the facts, and of course, Jeff Sessions hemmed and hawed and say, well, we need facts. He laid out the facts for Sessions, but Sessions appears to be, too dense to get it.
Well, we're going to see over time. I mean, we have learned that the Department of Justice now has a number of months been looking into Uranium One. And by the way, this doesn't even bring up the Uranium One question. It doesn't bring up the email server question. This is just basically on the dossier and the investigation, Trump-Russia. What's your take, Sidney Powell? Is this abuse of power, and did they leave too many breadcrumbs in their wake to cover up for potential crimes?
Yes, I think our creeps on a mission are going to be exposed, as I discussed in the article I wrote for Hannity.com. Did the FBI pay Christopher Steele? The answer is going to be yes. Was the FISA warrant used to get was the Steele dossier used to get the FISA warrant? The answer is going to be yes. Did the FBI validate it? No. And
did the FBI pay Christopher Steele? I want to know that too.
Yeah, they did. They did. I'm sure they did. For one thing, they paid Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS, it turns out, was a contractor of the FBI and was apparently getting raw FISA information through the FBI.
Why would the FBI go basically shred the Constitution? Or why? I should be clear, not rank and file FBI, but people at the highest levels of the FBI or Department of Justice. Why would they ever do that, knowing that it's unconstitutional and a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
Well, the FISA court has issued an opinion that was disclosed in May that finds very serious Fourth Amendment violations. And Admiral Mike Rogers, head of the NSA, self-reported these violations when he discovered them. The court was all over the Obama administration. We didn't know it at the time, but according to the opinion, the FISA violations started in April 2015.
Wow. What's your reaction to all this, Greg Jarrett, and how do we actually get now? Because I think we're getting to a very critical point in all of this, and that is that there's so much now evidence that so many different things were done wrong here. Now, after a year of denials, we know the dossier bought and paid for by Hillary and the DNC controlled by Hillary. And then that dossier was full of Russian lies and propaganda. Now, she put the fix in on a primary. We have Comey and Strzok putting the fix in on the email server investigation. She tried to use the dossier to fix the general election and lie to the American people. And then when that all didn't work out, they used it to get a FISA warrant against an opposition candidate in a presidential election year. And based on those lies that she paid for, and then spying on a president-elect. I don't know if this gets any worse.
You know, it's like Alice through the looking glass. It's all upside down and backwards. Hillary Clinton should be facing innumerable charges, and so should those at the FBI and the Department of Justice who, for political bias and personal animus, cleared Clinton and tried to frame Donald Trump. And, you know, there's plenty of evidence for a second special counsel. There's no evidence for the original.
But this is just on this issue. I mean, do we need do we now that we know the fix was in on the email server, if we have equal justice under the law? I know people saying, why is Hannity talking about this? Because the fix was in on a legal matter when we know felonies were committed, Sidney Powell. That's why.
Exactly. I don't think we need a special counsel, though. The Department of Justice ought to be able to do all this itself.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to disagree with you, but not with Rod Rosenstein as a Deputy Attorney General and a feckless Jeff Sessions as the AG.
Well, you heard Rod Rosenstein there say, I see nothing wrong with Robert Mueller. I'm like, well, we had news breaking last week that Andrew Weissman was leaking to the AP about Paul Manafort, and then he was the lead investigator against Paul Manafort. Isn't that called a conflict of interest?
Oh, yes, among other things. But that's why I said it ought to be done by the Department of Justice. It won't be as long as the current people are in place.
It should be. But these are not normal circumstances with normal people at the helm of the Justice Department. That's the problem.
I mean, you're saying that some of this can be done by the Department of Justice, but you're adamant that we need a special counsel, Greg. Why?
Well, because I have no confidence in the people at the top of the Department of Justice, Sessions and Rod Rosenstein. Look, Rod Rosenstein won't get rid of Mueller because for a conflict of interest, because Rosenstein himself has a conflict of interest. Both men should be nowhere near any of these cases. Jeff Sessions doesn't seem to comprehend that, probably because he recused himself, and I don't think he had to. So when you've got the AG who's recused himself and the deputy AG who's biased, I mean, how can we have confidence in the integrity of this system?
We can't.
I don't think we can. And why is the media just ignoring all of this, Sidney Powell?
Because it's so big and so bad, they don't want to touch it.
Well, I mean, but this is bigger. Isn't this
entire narrative? It destroys everything they've said for the last 2 years, probably.
But I mean, isn't this based on everything we know about Watergate? Isn't this a much bigger story?
Totally.
It is. Watergate was, quite honestly, the cover-up of a burglary. This is a cover-up of an effort to subvert democracy and electoral politics. It's much bigger.
I mean, that's
so of an egregious conspiracy to alter the results of the election and then to try to take out President Trump. It's absolutely outrageous.
But
I mean, there are criminal conspiracy violations, there are election law violations, there are obstruction of justice violations. There are probably 12 to 25 people that should be indicted.
All right, stay right there. We'll take a break. We'll come back. I mean, subverting an election, a presidential election, trying to undermine a duly elected president. Yeah, I would think that's a big deal for the media, but apparently it's not. And as we continue with Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, Sidney Powell, federal appellate attorney, former federal prosecutor, author of the best-selling book License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. You did write this piece on Hannity.com about Michael Horowitz is really investigating the investigators, referring to this Inspector General report that we expect coming out when? This month? Next month? Do we know?
Well, he's already started producing documents. He produced hundreds of thousands of pages Friday night to the Congressional Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, I think it was. So they've got all of that information to go through now. And then the report itself, it may be a couple of months before he officially reports and testifies in front of Congress.
So they have received 100,000 plus documents that they've got to now sort through. Why do you have so much confidence? I read your piece, and I have faith in you. I mean, why do you have so much confidence in Michael Horowitz?
Well, he, for one thing, has been fought with the Obama administration from the time he first became Inspector General. He was actually appointed by President Obama, but he's one of 47 inspectors general who signed a letter to Congress complaining that the Obama administration was blocking his efforts to do his job. He works for the taxpayers, really. He's sworn to oversee the department and make sure it complies with everything it's supposed to comply with. And he's repeatedly reported that the Obama administration was keeping him from doing his job.
And Congress, Greg, mandated the position of IG for every major federal agency, but I noticed in Sydney's article that Hillary's State Department was not subjected to this.
That's right, which is how she got away with a private email server in the basement of her home for the exclusive use of all of her documents, including 110 classified documents that were marked that way when they were sent and received. She got away with it because I suspect people within the Obama administration, at the behest of Hillary Clinton, chose not to appoint one so that she could get away with conduct that is illegal.
Exactly.
She wanted to keep all of
part of her deal with Obama.
I think it was.
Wow. All right, guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we'll have you both on regularly, as you know. And I think we're now on the downhill side of this, and information is coming fast and furious. We'll update everybody tonight at 9. Thank you all for being with us. We really appreciate it. Quick break. We'll come back. 800-941-SEAN. Dr. Alveda King is going to join us on this Martin Luther King Day, and Pastor Daryl Scott and Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. Also, we'll check in with James O'Keefe, a blockbuster new undercover video released today where a Twitter top engineer, apparently, and hundreds of others at Twitter, at least according to that guy, are sorting through your private direct messages and going through pictures and texts that you think are private. I mean, it may be the biggest anti-privacy policies we've ever heard of. We're trying to get some background from Twitter on this, and so far no response. Quick break, right back. We'll continue.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to see. My fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia.
On this Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, wow, one of the most captivating speakers of all time. One of the most iconic, just amazing visionaries of his time. This year will be 50 years since Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Joining us now is evangelist Alveda King, Dr. Alveda King. She's the director of civil rights for the unborn, for Priests for Life, and niece of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And always great to have you back, Dr. King. And Pastor Darrell Scott, the Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, welcome all of you on this Dr. Martin Luther King Day. Dr. King, this is your uncle. You loved him. How old were you when he was assassinated?
Hello, my friends, and thank you for having me back on your show. Listen, I was 17 years old. I got married the next year, and I had marched and gone to jail in Louisville, Kentucky with the open housing movement, had been trained fully in the nonviolent training that's required for the civil rights movement of that era. And I miss my uncle very much. I heard many of his speeches and his sermons, and I really embraced his sermons more even than his speeches. Some of his speeches were even sermons, too, if you consider that.
Wow. What was, in private, you see this powerful, I don't think anybody could command an audience like he could.
That charisma, the full of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. His daughter, Bernice, preached in Atlanta today, and in a similar vein. And so very captivating, but full of the Word of God. And so it comes from God. When you minister to the will and the Word of God, it captivates people. So our family has a gift of preaching. Some people say it's because we're part Irish, and if you kiss the Blarney Stone, then you become a good speaker. I don't know about all of that, but I do know the Holy Ghost had a lot to do with what he had.
Now, Pastor Scott, I know you're an amazing preacher. I don't think anybody can touch how great this man was.
No, he was an absolute cultural phenomenon. He was indicative of the times that he lived in. And plus, he's a Baptist preacher, man. And Baptist preachers can just flat out go. And, he had.
Are you saying you should become a Baptist now? Or what are you saying?
No, I'm just saying the Baptist preachers of those 60s, those 1960s Baptist preachers, now they have you standing up. They'll fill your tank up with gas and give you a gas can to get with later when you run out.
But all these years later, and you listen to that speech, and it just like gives you, goosebumps, your chi.
My parents had that album. They actually recorded that speech and had it in album form. It was a white cover, the March on Washington. And that's my brother's birthday, August 28th, the day it was in 1963. But It was a tremendous speech. It was a tremendous speech. Once again, he was very, very captivating. He had great content and great charisma. There was an anointing upon that speech, and it was one of the great monumental speeches given by a man of all time.
Dr. Peterson, Reverend Peterson, your thoughts?
You know, every time. First, I want to say Happy New Year to you, Sean.
Happy New Year,
and Doctor and Pastor Scott. Every time I hear it, it sounds brand new.
I know, right? That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it's still full of life, and you can tell. You know, you sense the love and the meaning in it, and I really, really appreciate it. Dr. King had a major impact on my life, especially growing up in Alabama, not far from Montgomery. It really had a major impact on my life.
Were you a part of this? If I remember correctly, you grew up during segregation, didn't you?
I did. I grew up in Alabama on a plantation outside of Montgomery near Tuskegee, and I also grew up under the Jim Crow laws. I remember the for colors only sign, for whites only. I even protested during the Civil Rights Movement. We did some sit-ins in the area that I grew up, and so that speech that you were playing it just now, it just brought back a lot of memories. It made me realize how far we really have come.
What do you mean you grew up on a plantation? Explain the working on a plantation.
Well, my grandfather, my grandparents and their parents and their parents, my parents, they all grew up on this plantation. And my great-grandfather and after him, my grandfather ran the plantation down there in Alabama. And the boys had to be taken out of school twice a year, once to plant the crop and another time to bring it in. I remember we had a big white house on a hill, and whenever the owners of the plantation would come down to visit, we all had to go and clean it up and get it ready for them. So that speech brought back a lot of those memories.
Dr. King.
Can I jump in for a second before you even go there? Sean, you lived in Atlanta
Yes, ma'am.
for a while.
I did.
And you walked some of the same streets that Martin Luther King grew up on, probably went to the birth home. And now President Trump has signed John Lewis's bill. Now, that's something they actually did together. Isn't that amazing? And this is now a national historic park. The same streets where he grew up. So I'm listening to where Reverend Peterson is saying how he grew up in his environment. And you're familiar with where Martin Luther King grew up. I just wanted to mention that it is now a national park.
Yes, Dr. King, I had heard that was turned into a national park. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue with Dr. Evangelist Alveda King, and Pastor Darrell Scott and Reverend Peterson on the other side of this break. Right, as we continue with Dr. Alveda King and Pastor Darrell Scott and Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson on this Martin Luther King Day. You know, I got to tell you, Dr. King, and I know you from my Atlanta days, but I got an education in Atlanta. And even though I had disagreements with Joe Lowry and Reverend Lowry, and I had disagreements with Andy Young and Maynard Jackson, later Bill Campbell. I became best friends with Hosea Williams. What a character, what a great human being he was. I love that man. He was amazing. And even Tom Houck, who I think, did he drive your uncle at some point?
He did sometimes, and then he became a personality. Tom became a personality himself, of course.
Oh my gosh, he's the most liberal guy in Atlanta, but a wonderful guy. I still like him, and I got to know and understand, and in John Lewis and the history of what happened and the bravery that they faced. I was.
They really did, and John was a student back then. Either was SNCC, the student body, or something. He was younger than my uncle, but he was one of the main leaders, and he was beat mercilessly on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. My dad was beat back then, and Hosea too. They were all out there marching in Selma. So that's some of their history, and that's what we need to remember about John Lewis too. He's just a civil rights.
No, he got hit in the head with a head with a brick.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Unbelievable.
So, powerful civil rights leader.
One very interesting thing that was said in the speech by Dr. King I thought was so powerful is that Black America one day would be judged by the contents of character. He talked about how one day black boys and girls, white boys and girls would join hands together in love. And it's just so unfortunate that has not been completed. I believe had Dr. King still been alive, that today the races in America would be as one, and not so divided in the way that Jackson and those guys have done over the years. It's an unfortunate thing because Dr. King, he wanted to change the laws so that the same laws that govern white America would govern black folks. And I believe had we done that.
But I think you're right. I think had his work continued, it would have been unbelievably amazing. But isn't that why good people like him get killed? They want to kill goodness. Some people, evil people, want to kill good. He was.
There's definitely warfare between good and evil, that's for sure. So once they kill a good man, things start to change as far as the love and the character.
Bernice Albertine King, the youngest child of Martin and Coretta, spoke at the service today. In the midst, Dr. Ben Carson was here. John Lewis actually came in, and the pastor Warnock they were beginning to call President Trump a hypocrite and everything. But by the time Bernice preached, she says, it really doesn't matter who's in the White House. We've got to come together in unity. We have to love. It's going to be love and communication that breaks this thing. And she says that we need to keep the nonviolent principles that my dad talked about, too. That young lady, by the time she finished, you could feel the sting.
What's going on with
the room?
And that's what I meant, though. I meant when I said his sons, I meant his successors, not necessarily his sons as far as biologically. I mean his successors. They dropped the ball and got distracted, didn't continue along his same vein, which led to this racial divide that they're trying to re-implement now.
All right, Dr. King, tell us about the Facebook thing.
Now, thank you for the opportunity. There's a wonderful movie coming out called Roe v. Wade. John Voight is one of the big actors in it. I'm going to do a cameo as the mother of Mildred Jefferson, and I'm an executive producer. But the team was advertising the picture on Facebook, and Facebook took it down. Even the paid advertisement, they have blocked the ad.
Serious?
Because the movie is so powerful. The naysayers don't want that message out, so Facebook took the ads down.
Between that and a Twitter story today, apparently Twitter people going through people's personal, private, direct messages and getting a thrill out of looking at people's, private text messages. This is a huge scandal, and later on we'll have James O'Keefe, who did the undercover video on it. Dr. King, we always love having you. God bless you and your family. Pastor Scott, you are one of the people that's advancing it, as well as Reverend Peterson. And we thank you for joining us on this Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We appreciate it. When we come back, James O'Keefe, Project Veritas.
Twitter's privacy policy states, quote, "We receive information when you view content on or otherwise interact with our services, even if you have not created an account," unquote.
It is creepy Big Brother. Like creepy Big Brother. It's like a level of like it. I don't want to say freaks me out, but it disturbs me. We can actually read your DMs.
So all your sex messages and your pics are on my server now. No. Yeah. All your illegitimate wives and all the girls you've been around with, you're on my server now.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna send it to your wife, and she's gonna use it in your divorce.
So if I send someone a direct message, y'all are gonna look at it to analyze it?
A machine's gonna look at it.
It is creepy Big Brother. Like creepy Big Brother. It's like a level of like it. I don't want to say freaks me out, but it disturbs me. I've seen way more than I've ever wanted to see in my life.
On DM messages?
DMs, tweets, yes. Lots of There's teams dedicated to us. We're talking at least 300 or 400 people. Yes, they're paid to look at.
We have information from people, if you go to Twitter for the first time, we have information about you.
Okay.
Because we actually bought a company because of this, Ads Network. So when you visit, we serve ads for other companies in other people's sites.
Okay.
So when you go and you see that ad, we get the information that you're this person seeing this ad at this moment, at this location, on this website.
Okay.
So we already have a lot of information about you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
What if that fell into the wrong hands? How would you protect people from that?
You don't.
You don't?
There's no way.
Indeed, Twitter's privacy policy states, quote, we receive information when you view content on or otherwise interact with our services, even if you have not created an account, unquote.
It is creepy Big Brother. Like creepy Big Brother. I mean, it's like a level of, like, I don't want to say freaks me out, but it disturbs me.
All right, news roundup and information overload hour. That, of course, James O'Keefe and his latest blockbuster undercover video. We will air it, and James O'Keefe will join us tonight on Hannity on the Fox News Channel. He's here in studio. Well, why are you wearing a tie to a radio studio? What is up with that? His brand new book is out today, American Pravda, My Fight for Truth in the Era of Fake News. We've known each other for how many years now? A long time.
9 years.
And in all that time, you have been under fire.
Constantly.
And it's the questions come in, and it's pretty predictable. He edits the tapes. It's not real. It's not this. It's not that. But you put the tapes up most of the time, if I'm not mistaken, all the time in total, right?
Yes, we put up more tape than anyone in the media does, and their quip over the last few days has been there's no evidence to suggest people don't say things. We actually present audio and video evidence, unlike the mainstream media, to back up most of our quotes.
But 60 Minutes for years used to do these undercover investigations all the time. If I'm not mistaken, I think 2020 used it. There's been plenty of people in the media that have done this, and the fact that you do it makes it different because it doesn't advance the political agenda of the left, correct?
Yeah, it bypasses them. They're like a political cartel. The mainstream media doesn't want any independent source to threaten them. But Upton Sinclair, the Chicago Sun-Times, a whole chapter in this book about the Chicago Sun-Times used to do very sophisticated, elaborate undercover work to expose graft and corruption. And Mike Wallace in the 80s said, you know what, I'm not doing it anymore. And I think it had to do with liability and the laws of just getting sued. And a lot of these big corporations don't take the risks that independent citizens do, so they feel threatened by people like me.
But the interesting thing is the one time, I can only think of the one instance, it wasn't that long ago, where I guess the Washington Post identified you as you were doing one of your sting operations. That was heaven for the media. Yeah. They thought they struck gold, and they thought they had the main vein of a mine.
They thought they could take us down. There's been a couple times in my career, Sean, where I was arrested, I was falsely accused, I was maligned. But they need to understand how undercover work works. You use an alias to gain someone's trust because we believe that a lot of these bad people are not going to tell the truth about what they're doing. And if we just sort of relay to the people what they're saying, we're not telling the truth to our audience. So we need to use deception only as a means to gain access to people so that we can tell the truth. This is what muckrakers used to do. They won Pulitzers for doing things. In the 70s, they were undercover to expose voter fraud, Medicaid fraud, things that are unthinkable today they used to do. So it's a renaissance of sorts.
And well, let's go to this particular case. Let's start at the beginning of the series and bring us through to where we are today.
Right.
Because as somebody that uses Twitter, now, interestingly, I let my entire staff use my Twitter account, and they have access to everything. And but I guess people are using the private areas of Twitter known as direct messaging as a means of sending salacious material to other people they're meeting online, which is weird, but if they want to do it, that's up to them. But Twitter is taking it all.
Yes.
Walk us through the whole sting.
Well, first, today's video, we just broke this, and it's going viral everywhere. It's the top of Drudge. It talks about how they're taking private, and I don't do this, but a lot of Americans send their girlfriend, send their significant other, these private photographs, and these engineers at Twitter are talking about storing them on a database. And they talk about all the pornographic images they enjoy looking at of your private data. Most people don't realize.
Naked pictures they're sending.
Naked pictures, private part pictures. An engineer at Twitter says we have hundreds of people employed to do nothing but look at these pics.
400, right?
400 engineers at Twitter. There's a few thousand.
That's all they get paid to do?
That's what he says on the tape.
Yeah.
He's bragging about how he looks at pictures of women spread eagle. And this is a sort of invasion of privacy. And people don't realize that when you go on these web messaging sites, that they can actually take your messages and share them with the government. He even says at one point in the tape, he says, we brag, I can give them to your other ex-girlfriends and wives. So Sean, we've done 3 videos. The first video, they take the president's private direct messages and they're willing to give them to DOJ. The second video, they're shadow banning or muting what you report from other people's timelines. And Twitter is the new town square. This is where people spread information. If they take away our rights to talk to each other, I don't know where people are going to go.
That would be like stealing somebody's private email or private texting. And unreasonable search and seizure, or if
Right.
you're handing it to the government, now we got a much bigger problem. This is,
Yes, Fourth Amendment implications are staggering on this one, and I know you guys at the Hannity programs have been instrumental because you're the first people to call up for comment. Last time you did that a year ago with Bob Creamer, and they were fired. They resigned.
They were all fired,
and the
yep.
media was shamed into covering it. So we are the tip of the spear here. Veritas, Hannity. I mean, we're breaking these stories that are. This may be the greatest censorship story of our time. The invasion of privacy is grotesque. I've been tweeting at journalists all day. By the way,
well, they're not going to run it because they are American Pravda. I agree with that. But the fact that they're doing this and there's not broader outrage, because look, I'm a conservative and I believe in the Constitution, and I believe, whatever happened to the belief in the rights of privacy. I mean, could you imagine? I don't know if this is applicable, but anything that a woman would choose to do if somebody is spying on them and spreading that information and so on and so on, I think the left would be upset.
I think they are upset. I've had journalists reach out to me privately, Sean, in the last few days saying this is a pretty big story. I had the New York Times reporter email me. I've had people privately email me. I think they're afraid to DM me because the Twitter people are spying on them.
They're watching.
But I think that they're just – I think that, Sean, and this is what this book, American Pravda, is about, I think they're afraid of their power being threatened by independent people breaking stories. They want to have control over the narrative.
I hate to tell them, James, that ship has sailed, and in part, I mean, I spent a lot of time on my program talking about fake news. I spent a lot of time discussing issues, but I saw Obama on David Letterman on Netflix, and he takes another shot at Fox News. If you're looking at Fox, you're looking at an alternative reality, and I'm like, yeah, we're busy not on Trump-Russian collusion, but on real crimes and real felonies that have really been covered up at a massive level that the media won't touch because they've got a political agenda. You run into this every day.
Every day. It's not that these journalists are bad people. I know, Sean, we've talked about this. Not even bad journalists. I think they're part of a sort of industrial system of production that manufactures consent, falsifies reality. They're like players following a soccer ball on the field. From this story, today, it's what the president allegedly said, although there's no audio and video that we know of, in the office. And long you have this propaganda vortex that needs to be threatened by independent citizen journalists. So all of this book talks about my career breaking these stories that force the media to cover it and what it takes. Because, Sean, what it really takes is to be maligned and attacked and targeted. And when you're effective, they're going to come after you, and you have to learn to be hated. It's part of success, and most people aren't willing to do that.
You're describing my life, so that's something we share and have in common. But on the other side, there are all these other people that appreciate this work.
Yes.
And I think for example, I don't know what's going to happen to Twitter now. Now, I've already set up an account on Gab. I don't use it yet,
right?
But I think it's going to grow into the next Twitter. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. James O'Keefe is with us. We put his video, a link to his video on Hannity.com. He's got a brand new book out. Now, if you want to know how corrupt the media is and you want to truly understand it more deeply and you want more citizen journalism, which I do, you're going to want to read his book, American Pravda. It's on my site, Hannity.com. It's on Amazon.com and in bookstores everywhere. It's my fight for truth in the era of fake news. James O'Keefe, more with him on the other side as we continue the Sean Hannity Show. All right, we continue with James O'Keefe. He has his new video out. Drudge Report puts it up as its lead. Pervy Twitter sorts through sex messages and pictures. 400 Twitter employees. We are seeking comment as we speak from Twitter, and James will join us on Hannity tonight. We'll show you the undercover video that he did. He's got a brand new book out, American Pravda, My Fight for Truth in the Era of Fake News. It's on Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere, Hannity.com. You go into a lot of stories in the book. I don't want to give the book away, but this book, you talk about defining characteristics of journalists, so-called journalists. And you tell the story of Katie Couric in 2009, and she won the esteemed Cronkite Award. Explain that.
Yeah, well, there's a whole chapter about journalism and its demise and what it takes to do this type of work. And journalism has become sort of flippant. It's become, most journalists, Sean, don't actually go out into the field and actually do reporting. They just sort of read off teleprompters. Katie Couric won an award for asking Sarah Palin a question a question. The people on my team, we've gotten government organizations defunded, like Acorn, CEOs fired, like at NPR. We've had states pass voter ID laws, and we've had attorneys general try to have me arrested, criminal grand jury subpoenas. I have 12.
Do you have any legal issues ongoing still? Or?
Yes, we have 12 civil actions. We have a dozen attorneys. We're fighting for the First Amendment, and we're the tip of the spear. And that's what truth to power is. But somewhere after Watergate, I've done a lot of research, journalists started to take themselves way too seriously, and they have a sort of hero complex. And gone are the days of the sort of muckraking, investigative shoe leather reporting. And now it's all just about narrative. And we don't let the facts lead us where we want to. It's
watch cable news any minute of any day.
It's obvious enough, but I think it's worth reading about and tracing it back. And they think, well, results matter. So whether it's taking down Stanley McChrystal, whether it's taking down Sarah Palin, these journalists claim to want scalps, but then you have independent journalists who get scalps and they don't want to acknowledge it. So journalism has become very perverted.
How do you ignore Uranium One? How do you ignore that Hillary committed multiple felonies, email server? How do you ignore an FBI director and people in the FBI literally writing an exoneration before an investigation? How do you ignore the use of the weaponry, the powerful weapons of intelligence to surveil and unmask and leak the raw intelligence of American citizens, which is supposed to be protected? You said a couple of things. You said you're the tip of the spear. Mm-hmm. You said in the last segment how hated you are, and that's the criteria. That's what it takes. You care that much. And I have known you since you first came out when you were dressed as a pimp.
Right.
And it was pretty groundbreaking at the time. And you've kept going. You are hated. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it. I live that life in many ways as well. But it's so important to you. What drives you with this? Why do you want to keep going with this?
Justice. Ever since I was in college, I was motivated. My teammates are motivated by justice. But it's Sean, they come after you, and it makes you wonder. It makes you think to yourself, why should I keep doing this if they keep maligning and attacking? And I think that the media still has a degree of power, Sean. I think we're not reached the tipping point yet where citizens have control over the narrative. And I think to be effective is to be hated. And to actually change the narrative, to be ignored, is to be respected. And I just think that the media has an unbelievable ability to shame and humiliate people. And I think that's what deters Republicans and conservatives from actually doing anything, because they're afraid of the humiliation they're going to face. And I think we have to say, you know what? That's a badge of honor. That's a sign of respect. I've been subpoenaed. I've had criminal grand jury subpoenas. I've had people show up. I was on probation for 3 years. I was falsely accused. And one of my advisors said, James, that means you're doing something right.
One of the first things I ever told you after you were dressed as a pimp in that case, which everybody remembers, and you just listed off all the times you have been successful. I remember I told you better get a bunch of attorneys on your side, and I remember telling you dot every I and cross every T. I don't think I was wrong.
I remember that.
If you have a few minutes, stay with us. We'll continue. A few more minutes. James O'Keefe, he's got a new book out, American Pravda, My Fight for Truth in the Era of Fake News. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. You can get the book on Amazon.com, Hannity.com, bookstores everywhere. And his big, breakthrough today, undercover operation about Twitter hiring, some 400 people, according to this guy, that they got on tape, sending and sorting through private sex messages and pictures.
To read your DMs.
So all your sex messages and your pics are on my server now. No Yeah. All your illegitimate wives and all the girls you've been around with, they're on my server now. Oh my god. I'm gonna send it to your wife and sue you in your divorce.
So if I send someone a direct message, y'all are gonna look at it to analyze it?
A machine's gonna look at it.
It is creepy Big Brother.
Creepy Big Brother.
I mean, it's like a level of I don't want to say freaks me out, but it disturbs me.
I've seen way more than I've ever wanted to see in my life.
On DM messages?
DMs, tweets, yes. Lots of There's teams dedicated to us. I mean, we're talking at least three or 400 people. Yes, they're paid to look at.
So what happens is when you write stuff and when you post pictures online, they never go away. They're always on there. Because even after you send them, people are like analyzing them, they're seeing what you're interested in, they're seeing what you're talking about, and they sell that data.
They sell to who? Like advertisers?
Advertisers.
Wait, you talking about just regular tweets or the DMs? Or both?
Everything. Anything you post online.
Wow. So even what you think is private, direct message, they're analyzing it and selling that.
Hey, what? So if I send someone a direct message, y'all are going to look at it to analyze it?
A machine's going to look at it. An algorithm will look at it.
Why?
And they'll make a virtual profile about you.
This is not your run-of-the-mill big data. This is personal and specific, and that has a high premium to advertisers.
To actually charge advertisers for money, we have to prove it was you, and that's why using like an email address or like a cookie, something that can track you, that's more likely.
Mihai Florea is a Twitter software engineer who's been with the company for 3 years.
That's how we make most of our money.
Yeah, so you kind of like sign your privacy away, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You're paying for the right to use our website with your data, basically. Yeah. And it's the same on every free website.
We have information from people, like, if you go to Twitter for the first time, we have information about you.
Okay.
Because, like, we actually bought a company because of this, like, ads network. So, like, when you visit, like, we serve ads for other companies in other people's sites.
Okay.
So when you go and you see that ads, we get the information that you're this person seeing these ads at this moment, at this location, on these websites.
Okay.
So we already have a lot of information about you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, what if that fell into the wrong hands? How would you protect people from that?
You don't.
You don't?
There's no way.
Indeed, Twitter's privacy policy states, quote, "We receive information when you view content on or otherwise interact with our services, even if you have not created an account," unquote.
It is creepy Big Brother. Like
creepy Big Brother.
I mean, it's like a level of, like, I don't want to say freaks me out, but it disturbs me.
All right, that is video and audio, in this case, from Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, in his latest undercover video. And there you have a chief engineer over at Twitter, you know, saying that there are hundreds of people that work for Twitter, and what they do is they monitor your private direct messaging and pictures that you think are private, and they store it on a database. I've got to think that there's a Justice Department or some type of legal action sitting in the wings here based on all of this. James O'Keefe is in studio with us. We'll show you that video with James tonight on Hannity at 9 Eastern on the Fox News Channel. He's got a brand new book out, American Pravda, My Fight for Truth in the Era of Fake News. Amazon.com, Hannity.com, bookstores everywhere. I keep watching this and hearing this, and I'm more shocked every time I look at it.
Yeah, it's maybe the greatest censorship stories of our time, invasion of privacy stories of our time. I wanted to say one more thing, Sean. A year ago when you broke those stories on Democracy Partners, you were the tip of the spear. And one of the things I want to tell your audience is what happened was I went to a lot of little major media organizations with that evidence. This is so damning. This Twitter stuff is so damning. And they wouldn't break the stories. You want to know why? And these were videos of Hillary Clinton operatives fomenting violence at rallies. They were all fired because they said, we're afraid to air these stories inside the Hillary campaign because if we do, Hillary might take away our broadcasting licenses.
Did they really say that?
They inferred it. Eventually, they told me after the election the truth. At the time, they insinuated it. And what the irony is, I'm a little rinky-dink nonprofit group with a ragtag team of committed, brave citizens, and we're breaking.
By the way, they're in the other room.
I got a couple of them here.
That's a really nice way to talk about people that work with you.
We are ragtag. We're up and coming. We're George Stephanopoulos said upstarts. So, but the point is that why can't these major media companies do the work? Because they're afraid. They're afraid of the government. And in these Twitter videos, they're saying they're going to share these DMs with the government, and they're just flippant about it. So all these things are interrelated, Sean, and we have to do the work ourselves. The people listening to this program are going to have to do the independent, of course, make sure you do it legally, but we have to do it ourselves.
You know, it's funny you say that, and I'm always tagged as not a journalist, and okay, I'm not right. I'm not an objective journalist. But there is something called an advocacy journalist,
right,
or an opinion journalist,
right.
You know, and a lot of times, under the banner of being a talk show host, sometimes I do my own reporting. For example, we've been reporting on Uranium One. Everybody else in the media ignores it. We've been reporting on the email server scandal. We were reporting on the collusion of Peter Strzok and James Comey. We've been doing reporting on who Robert Mueller put on his team to investigate Donald Trump. We have, and that means I make my own phone calls to my sources, to people at the DOJ, to people in the FBI, to people in the intelligence community. I talk to them all myself. I don't think your average so-called journalist spends a lot of time making those phone calls, and they're quick to criticize you. Okay, what part of, and if I'm on the left,
right,
what part of what you broke today would they not want to know?
They think journalism is an identity, when in reality, journalism is an activity. Everyone's a journalist. If you do journalism, congratulations. If you catch someone on the street and you get a car accident on your phone, you're a journalist. But, Sean, their ability to manipulate language. I was detained at the border. There's a whole chapter in this book, American Pravda. I was detained at the border 10 times because I exposed border insecurity. I dressed up in Osama bin Laden mask.
I remember that. You crossed the border.
And the sheriffs in Texas, the U.S. government's going to come after you big time. And did they? I mean, every time I crossed the border, they detained me. They asked me who I'm voting for. And because they said, what outlet do you work for? I said, I work for my own. They said, no. What outlet do you work for? They would never do that to an NBC News or CBS News reporter, but they can get away with it because of the language they employ about people like me and you. We are journalists. Everyone's a journalist. If you're doing journalism, you're a journalist. And this is the debate. It's really about the First Amendment and what protections we have as citizens. But that's what this is all about.
And when you talk about American Pravda, there might be some young people in the audience that don't recognize or understand Pravda was the propaganda arm of the former Soviet Union.
It was a Soviet Pravda. The difference between the Soviet Union's Pravda and the American media is many people in this country, when they look at MSNBC, CNN, they don't know they're being lied to. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, there's a whole chapter about this Gulag archipelago where they have these Potemkin villages.
By the way, people need to listen to Alexander Solzhenitsyn and his really brutal takedown of the speech he gave at Harvard.
He said the media has more powerful than the executive, judicial branches of the U.S. government, but who is the media accountable to? And I know that we have a First Amendment, but there's more than rights. You have responsibilities in this country. And what responsibility does the media have to tell the truth? And by the way, Sean, I saw this Post movie with Ben Bradley and Tom Hanks. Half of me threw up in my mouth, but the other half of me thought, when I heard Ben Bradley say, Tom Hanks say, if we don't hold them accountable, who will? My message to this government and to this media is, if James O'Keefe doesn't hold you guys accountable, who will?
Such a good point. And look, I would argue, and I think we have some really good people that I work with every day, like Sarah Carter and John Solomon.
They're very good.
They're very, very good. And they're actually breaking stories, and they're pounding the pavement, and they're knocking on doors, and they're making phone calls, and they're getting sources, and they're breaking stories. And we don't have a lot of that, but nobody else in the media is touching it. Go through the list of successful stories you have had, because there's been many. And then when you look at the amount of criticism you've gotten, well, what are they so upset about? That you discovered some truth? That people speaking in a moment that they don't know that they're being taped, and you do it legally? What, they're upset? They don't want to hear that part?
They're not upset about the tactics. Not in the abstract, they're not. They're upset about the results and the fruits of the labor. We've taken down Acorn. President Obama signed a bill to defund Acorn, and both houses of Congress were democratically controlled. The CEO of NPR was fired. 6 states changed their voter ID laws and passed voter legislation because we showed that we can get offered anyone's ballot, even dead people's ballots. We've gotten Obamacare navigators fired. We've gotten Medicaid workers fired. We had hidden camera recordings inside CNN showing their producers saying the Russia story was BS and a, quote, witch hunt. We actually got President Trump to talk about our videos in the presidential debates with Hillary Clinton. Bob Creamer and Scott Fogle were both fired. The Wisconsin Attorney General launched a criminal investigation. We've gotten a New York Times reporter let go. And the New York Times changed their social media policy because we exposed bias. And, Sean, we're just getting started. And I will tell you one thing. They are going to try to put me in jail. They're going to try to falsely accuse me and sue me out of existence. But the more they come after us, the bigger our fan base becomes and the more irrelevant the media becomes, because people are looking for anybody
to tell
the truth.
Let's talk about the growth of Project Veritas. I mean, now when you release a video, how viral do they go?
I mean, well, this Twitter series is
this the biggest ever?
I think so. I think by implication. I mean, the view count might not be as big as that Democracy Partners one, but I think this is like one of those moments in history when it's so polarized that people on the internet are like, why aren't you talking about this? And everyone on these, like all your networks are on in the studio here, everyone just wants to ignore it. But the more they ignore it, the more irrelevant they become. Because if they're not going to talk about what people care about, well, what are people going to do? They're going to listen to you, Sean.
That's what and watch the TV show. There's no doubt about it. But there's certainly an industry that is designed. There are people that tape every minute, every second of every day that I'm on the air. And the hope that I say one thing wrong, and then they could take that comment.
Well, you're held to a higher standard, but that's our cross to bear. I mean, we're held to.
So you're telling me to say, you're basically saying stop whining, Hannity. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I think people need to be informed.
But I'm saying it's unfair.
It's very unfair. Yes.
And the unfairness of it all is they don't believe in freedom of speech or expression. They don't want other opinions out there, and it is an industry that is extraordinarily well-funded to silence voices they disagree with. By the way, and that if you don't like what James O'Keefe is doing at Project Veritas, you don't have to watch it.
They're investigating citizen journalists. There's an old motto in journalism. There's an old chapter in this book, American Proud, about the history of investigative journalism. And they're supposed to afflict the comfortable, right? They're supposed to comfort the afflicted. What they're actually doing is comforting the powerful.
No, it's propaganda.
And afflicting the citizenry.
They are an extension of all things liberal, all things left wing, and they're a bunch of sheep, and they're lazy.
They're very lazy,
and they're overpaid.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Some of these people's budgets, salaries are twice my organizational budget. Sean, we have some 50 people now. We're a professional shop, and I've learned that people that want to do this work, it's hard work. You have to be in love with being in the field and actually doing it, not just conceptually.
It's also dangerous.
It's people. Our guys are risking their, I don't want to say risking their lives, but risking their skins. I mean, reputationally, it's the hardest thing about this work, Sean, is that if you get burned, you will be disgraced and humiliated, or at least thought of that way, by the Huffington Post. And you have to endure that. And
do you really care what the Huffington Post says? Because I don't think you do.
I am acknowledging the fact that most people do care. It is a fact of reality. And, Churchill.
I don't have that switch.
Well, you're a special human being. I think Churchill said you have the courage to continue. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. We just have to have the courage to not believe them and their characterizations about us. And Sean, we have a great team. We have great lawyers. I'll tell you this on your air. You're the first to hear it. The California Attorney General is now doing a full audit on me. The New York Attorney General wants to take away our tax-exempt status. And I'm not afraid, because the more they come after us, I'll make it public. I'll let that be known that they are coming after journalists.
It's the same thing. They want to shut you down.
That's all.
And by the way, that's a sad condition. An indictment. Well, yeah. All right, what's next for you? What are you going to do? I guess you're on a book tour now, right?
I'm on a book tour for like 2 weeks, and then I'm back breaking more stories. This Twitter story is a big one, Sean. I think your producers or your reporters, the calls you guys make are incredible, because you get the comment. You got Twitter to comment last week. They said, we're not actually doing this. And then they said, this guy's just one guy. He doesn't stand for what we're saying.
Well, now there's 9. James O'Keefe, I've said this from the beginning. I've always admired your courage. And I think that this is important work, and I think that people get to decide for themselves.
Yes.
And watch the videos, and if it's relevant to them, and, you would think that it should be. Thank you for stopping by. The book is called American Pravda, My Fight for Truth in the Era of Fake News. Basically, most news is fake. Hey, big investigative night tonight on Hannity on the Fox News Channel. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, and Sebastian Gorka. Also, James O'Keefe exclusively. His latest undercover video. This is beyond a violation of privacy when it relates to Twitter, and they're apparently sorting through all your private direct messages. We'll get to that. And James O'Keefe will join us. The great one, Mark Levin, tonight. Rare appearance, 9 Eastern. Hannity, hope you'll set your DVR, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. We'll see you tonight at 9. Have a great night.